So there's a lot of different ways to do color. Actually, real quick. So if you're looking for these examples, I'm gonna put links in the YouTube videos. So if you look at the YouTube video description, the links will be in there. But there is also a link on the class page under the link section, under the class recordings, which goes to the YouTube videos. There's class examples. If you click on this, you'll see the P5 examples that I've worked on in class. And keep in mind that you can click on that, you can go to File and Duplicate, and then you can make a copy to work on your own account. So yeah, that's where you'll be able to find those examples. So let's add some color. I'm gonna go back to my cat character. I'm gonna duplicate this and make a new example just so I can add some new stuff. So I'm gonna click duplicate and I'll change the name to with color. I'll say P5 color example. And so yeah, I'm gonna get rid of some of the other comments in here just to clear up a little space. Okay, so we're gonna add some color. Okay, so in P5, let's take a look at the reference. So I have the reference open here, but just as a reminder, if you wanna find it, you can go to Help and then go to Reference. It'll go right there. And you can search for stuff. So if I look for color, you'll see some stuff comes up, but we can also just scroll down and we can see that there is a whole section on color starting here. There's a lot of functions of different things that we can do with color. We're not going to do most of them today. Most of what we're going to do is setting color. So you can see that background function. We already kind of looked at that. The other ones that we're going to look at for the most part are fill, stroke, no fill, no stroke. And then somewhere around here, there is a stroke weight. I guess that isn't technically color. That's more... Let's see where that shows up, actually. Stroke weight. Oh, wait. We got to look at it. I guess they don't have it in the reference for some reason, but it is a function. Anyway, let's go back to our editor. So there's two main things to know about the way that color works in P5. The first thing is that you have fill and stroke. So this is kind of similar to Adobe Illustrator, where you have the center color of the shape is the fill, and then the outline of the shape, or if it's a line, it is just outline, is the stroke. So we have two colors that we can set on each shape. The other thing is that once we set a color, the color stays until we set a different color. So you can imagine this as you're painting and you have a bunch of paint buckets. If I dip my paintbrush in blue paint and I start painting, no matter what shape I paint, it's going to be blue until I choose a new color. So it works the same way in P5. So let's add a fill. So if I say fill, as we saw before, I can put a number in here, just like with my background. So if I say the fill is 0, the color will be black. And so now everything is black. Okay, so after I set fill, any shape that comes after this will take that fill. If I set the fill to white, that's the default white. It's gonna look exactly the same. If I wanna add more colors to this, I can add more parameters. So let's take a look at the actual reference for our color. So if I go to fill, it says sets the color used to fill shapes. There's a few different ways we can do this. So in this example, it's just a number and it's a grayscale number like we've seen already. In the next example, we have RGB values. So we can set the amount of red, the amount of green, and the amount of blue. I assume you guys have all used a color picker before, but just for a quick review, if we look at a color picker really quickly, we can see the different types of values that we use to describe color. So we have RGB is red, green, blue. CMYK is for printing. We're going to ignore that. HSV is the hue, saturation, and value, or HSL, hue, saturation, and lightness. We can actually use all of those in P5. But if we, move our color picker around, we see the RGB changing. If we go to, actually, let's use the Adobe color picker. I think it's just color.adobe.com. Okay. You guys have probably seen this website before. We can change the color mode, and then we can, it looks a little different than the last time I used it. Here's my sliders. So you can see RGB. If I increase R, we get more red. If I decrease R, we get less red. Same thing with green and blue. In P5, we can just write these numbers in, and we'll get those colors. So if I go to my fill and I want to add a little red, I might put like 100. If I want just red, I could put 0 for green and 0 for blue, and I'll get this kind of darker red color. So when we're mixing RG and B, one of the things to keep in mind is that sometimes you want a bright color, and so you need green and blue to get a lighter overall color. If you just have red, if I have like 255 red, I get some red, but it's kind of dark because I don't have the other colors. So I may need to add a little green and a little blue to get a lighter color. Now I have this kind of light pink color. So mixing with RG and B is not always that easy. You can also use HSB or CSS colors. So that may be a little bit easier. So in HSB, instead of using red, green, and blue, we use a hue, which is around the 360 degrees color wheel. So let's go back to Adobe for a second and change the color mode to HSB. So in HSB, we have a hue, which is any of the colors on the color wheel. And then instead of mixing our colors, we have just the saturation is the amount of color. So we can go from no color to full color. And then we have brightness is how bright the color is. So if we have a completely dark color, it's going to be black. If we have a completely light color, we'll see that hue. So in P5, if we want to use HSB, we can set the color mode to HSB. This is usually what I prefer to do because RGB is kind of confusing. So if I want to say color mode is HSB, those values are going to suddenly change. But now we can say something like, if we say 0 and 100 and 100, we're going to get a bright red color. And now we kind of have to know the color wheel, so that is a little bit trickier, but we can find a color more easily. So if I want something that's like pink or purple, I'd have to go all the way to the end of the color wheel. So maybe I would say like 300. And now we have kind of a nice pink color. Maybe I want it to be a little less bright. I could turn the brightness down, maybe turn the saturation down a little bit. So we can kind of find a nice color in there. And the other thing that's nice about that is we can use math with those numbers. So it makes it a lot easier to do, complementary colors or other things like that. Let me see if I could do like 270, something like that. Okay, that's pretty good. So that's one way to do color, or actually that's two ways to do color, RGB or HSB. But we can also just use CSS values. So in CSS, you have colors like red or pink or whatever. You can put those in quotation marks as a value, and it'll figure out what that color is. You can even use hex values like we use in CSS. And so there's a lot of different ways to create different colors. You should really do whatever you find easiest. There's another website called HTML Color Codes that I find very useful because it has all the names for the colors in CSS. And so you can look up all these names and you can find a nice color and you can organize, they're organized. So let's say I want to find a nice purple color. You can see the different purples here. And you can also see the RGB values and the hex code values. And so let's say I want plum. I like that color. That looks pretty good. I can just throw in, let me comment this out for a second actually. I can throw in plum. It just has to go in quotation marks. Since we're not actually writing CSS, I have to use quotation marks to indicate that this is a value, not a number. Also, I didn't mention this earlier, but another useful thing about comments is you can take out a part of code that you don't want. So if you write some code and you don't want to delete it, but you don't want it to be run, you can just add a comment by hitting command and question mark or forward slash, and it'll put 2 dashes in front of it or 2 forward slashes in front of it. And that means that it won't use that code, and then you can bring it back. So that's like an easy shortcut for trying different things. Okay, so we've got the fill plum. You can get rid of the stroke if you want. So that's another thing we might want to do with our basic shapes is I could say no stroke. And now that outline goes away. I actually think, oh yeah, plum looks different depending on my color mode. Oh, because this is different. Okay, so I'm going to comment this out for now. Okay. So if I say no stroke, that gets rid of those outlines altogether. We may want those back. We can bring them back later. But now we have this nice outline of the shape. So we have the ears and the face now kind of go together. We can't see the difference between those now. So then let's give the eyes a different fill because we can't see the eyes. So for the eyes, I'll use a fill. Maybe I'll go over to my Adobe color wheel and let's grab this hex value for our plum color and I'll plug it into this color over here. Actually, let's do a simple, let's do a triad color scheme and let's throw in that plum color. And it gives us some nice options. I kind of like this yellow color. So I can just grab that hex value and I'll go over here. And this hex value also has to go in quotation marks. So let me actually put a note for that. I'll say CSS values go in quotation marks, like that. Okay, so I can plug in that hex value. And anything that comes after that is going to have that new value. So you can see the eyes and the feet are now yellow. And everything that came before it, the face and the triangle ears, stay plum. You can also, another nice thing about P5 is it has a built-in color picker. So if I want something like a little brighter, I can move this over here. And it'll just like put in that color for me, although it looks like it didn't really work that well. Sometimes the P5 editor has errors. It is an open source piece of software, so you may run into some issues from time to time. Okay, that worked. So it does have a built-in color picker. It's going to put in a hex value if you use the built-in color picker. So then we lost the mouth details, so we need a stroke for that. So let's bring the stroke back. So now I'll say stroke. Maybe I'll use the same color just to keep it consistent. So I'll copy that and put it in there. And now we get the stroke back. And the other thing that we can use if we want the line weight to be larger, we can say stroke weight. And we can make it like 2. That'll make the strokes thicker. If I make it like 10, that's like too thick. So I can make it like that. But notice that the stroke is now getting added to the mouth or to the feet as well. I don't really want that. So what I can do is just go down here and turn no stroke off, or turn the stroke off with no stroke again. You can also say no fill if you need, an empty shape at some point. That's another thing that you can do. Let's say I wanted the eyes to be circles instead of, or to be, not filled in. I could move the eyes down here, and then I could say no fill, and now I get those little circles. Maybe you want some glasses or something. I'm gonna go back to what I had before. But yeah, that's basically it with color. There's just a few things that you need to be able to do. There's fill and stroke, and then the different color values, and no fill and no stroke. And then there's the color mode if you want to switch from RGB default to HSB. But the rest of it is just kind of playing around with the different values. You can use math to like make cool effects with the colors. Maybe we'll animate some colors later on when we do some more stuff. But for now, let's just keep it simple. Just add some basic colors. Actually, I want the feet to go back to purple. So let's grab my fill and put that down here. I'm going to animate the feet next. So we'll just leave it like that. My character is pretty small, but I want it to be small because it's going to be in a game later. So that's good for now. All right, I think that's it for color. I'm going to go over how to make a documentation post. Any questions before I go over that? Okay. So if we're going to document our project, we want to have an image of what we've been working on so people can see it. We can share the code. So the nice thing about P5 is it's online already. We don't have to publish it the way we did with Scratch. This link is available to anybody. So we can send the link easily, but we also want some documentation. So I'm going to throw some code in here that will make it easy to make an image. And we haven't really covered what I'm going to show you guys very much, but we're going to talk about these things more in later lessons. So I'm just going to throw a little function in here to react to a mouse click. And when I click the mouse, I'm going to create an image of the canvas. So I'm going to say function mouse pressed, which will just react to a mouse click. So the function mouse pressed, any code that I put in here will happen when I hit the mouse. It's sort of like the keyboard or the mouse event in Scratch. And then there's actually a save function, which is just going to save an image. And you can name the image. So if you put quotation marks and then put the name of the image and then an extension for JPEG or PNG, you can save your canvas. So I'm going to call this character.jpg. And then I'm going to run my code again. And now if I click on the canvas, it's going to download the image for me. So we don't see anything right now, but if I go to the Finder and go to Downloads, you can see that character.jpg image right there. So I can put that on the Open Lab, and people will be able to see what I've created so far without running my code. So you can use that. I'm going to save this, and I'll add this to our collection. So you can just copy and paste this mouse pressed code into whatever project you're working on and save an image. So I'll just put a note here, save an image of the canvas. So I've already got an image, so let's make a post. So I'm also going to share the code, and you can share a link to your code. If you have multiple different versions, that's fine, but you just need one. So if you go to File and Share, just use the edit version, that's fine. There's a full screen version as well, but we can just use the edit version. So I'm going to click on that. Or sorry, what I have to do actually is click on the middle and it'll copy that. So then I go back to the Open Lab and create a new post. And I'm going to call this P5 character. And I'll add my image. So I'll click on the plus block and go to image and just find that image. And I'll say, here is my cat character created with P5. And then I'll put a link to my code and I'll paste in that link. And that's all you have to do. If you want to make the link open in a new tab, that's always nice. And then you can publish. And I didn't add a category, so let's go back and go to post, and we'll add the category documentation, and then go to publish. And I'm going to copy that. We can take a look at the post. And there we go. That's pretty simple. So, you can click on that code and then you can duplicate it or You can just read the code and run the code and see how it works. So that's a nice thing about P5 and open source programming in general. And then once you've published that, just go to Brightspace and submit it. So this is going to be blog post 6, I think. Yeah. Yeah, here it is. So post image from your P5 sketch and OpenLab link. So we're just gonna post our OpenLab link here and click submit. And that's the whole process. Okay. Any questions? Okay.